how secure is your client info? I am Lauren Von Linnell, sales engineer here at Nextech, and I deal with network security quite a bit at our customer sites, and with me is Olga, and she works a lot with it too. So hopefully we get some good information today about why you do need to keep your client's information and your own safe within your network.
That's right, and we thought we're just going to start out, since it's titled Why You Need a Firewall, about how scary of a world it is out there. And I'll be honest, before I was in IT, I had no idea of how scary it actually is, and the more you learn about it, the more you realize how important it is to protect your data. According to a PricewaterhouseCoopers study, in 2015, there are 38% more security incidents than just the year before. That is a huge, huge number. And we also see that most people actually boosted their spending on security, and they actually saw that actually their financial loss went down. So that's kind of crazy if you think about it. NBC kind of reported that on the top 5 threats, among that were malware, viruses. Everybody remembers CryptoLocker and Heartbleed.
Yeah.
Lauren, you know that we have some issues with that.
We see that all over. Even today, we still see a little bit of the residuals of that and how it's changed over time. So even that threat landscape is still there and changing and evolving as it goes. Mm-hmm. And you know, when thinking about this webinar, a thought came to my mind, and a colleague of mine mentioned this when we talked about firewalls and why you would need one, and he said, well, it's kind of like asking somebody, why do you need to build a front door in your house? Why don't you just leave a big hole right there? Well, because there's things that are valuable in there, you just don't want people to get in there and just take. Exactly. So you do need that door there with a lock on it, and that lets people in, people out. Same thing with a firewall. It lets the information out just like your door does in your house. And it's kind of a no-brainer. It's like, why would you build a door in your house? You just do it. It's there by default. So it is by default a recommendation that we make for anybody to have a firewall on their network.
Correctly, no matter how big your business, and we'll get into detail with that. So the question is, how can you protect your business? And this kind of shows you that threat management is kind of a comprehensive approach. Of course, first you want to look at, okay, what are my risks? And then you can kind of assess your risk. And then part of it is also constantly, when you put those protections in place, like a firewall, to constantly review them and kind of have some control set in, and that you monitor them as well, right?
Identify those threats that are out there, like Olga said, and then have somebody come in and assess your network and any vulnerabilities that might exist, give you that report, and then you can make an intelligent decision about what you need to do to move forward. And then it's always a constant review after that, at least annually, where you want to assess where you're at, if your needs have changed, if your network has changed, your users and what they do, and then make adjustments as you go. But it is an ongoing, always out there kind of policy that you need to have as far as your security protocols in place. And then if there are some things that happen, a mitigation plan. That's why Mitigate is on there. You have to have a response plan. If somebody does get into your network, what are you going to do to minimize those losses, take action, and get some things fixed if there is an issue that does happen down the road.
That's right. I think one of the biggest fallacies we see is people think firewalls are kind of a set it and forget it thing, and they're really not. That is one of the most important IT aspects of your business, so you want to make sure you keep on top of it at all times. So let's maybe go through a little bit of what we're going to do today.
We're just going to go through a few of the basics about what you need to know about your own network to start down the road of getting it secure, why you need to be aware of it, those compliancy issues, and then after the fact, what it would take, what we just mentioned, to keep that ongoing and manage keeping it safe and secure down the road.
That's right. So we'll have Lauren start us out with some firewall basics.
Yeah, what you need to know. Whenever I go into a business or any entity that would need a firewall, I ask them some very basic questions so that we can get them the right solution. First off, your internet speed. The speed of your internet, there's a giant difference between the firewall that you need if you're running on a 50 meg internet connection compared to what we can offer now, a gigabit service. Just the ability for the actual firewall itself to process that amount of data coming through it, it will greatly change which one you need, which also impacts the cost and the services running on it. Number of internal users, that's very important just to know based upon how many requests are going to be going through that daily so that it can be sized correctly too. And then a bigger one is remote users. Most most firewalls and network devices that you want to allow remote users in from the outside, that's an additional setup and fee and some licensing that may need to go in there. So we need to know how many people need to work from home or have a phone at home or that kind of thing. So we're going to let those users in remotely. And also remote sites. We have quite a few businesses that have more than one site, even in different towns. And the ability to hook up those businesses virtually with a virtual private network safe and securely. That's another thing that we need to know so that we can keep everybody safe and secure and also allow them to communicate with each other remotely. And then also the services that are running on there. Most firewall suppliers have some kind of tiered approach to their services that they run so that you don't necessarily have to buy all of them. If you just need a few, maybe you do need content filtering, maybe you don't. So we just have to identify which ones you might need to run on there so that it's doing what you need it to do and it's not doing too much. So, and then also what I put on there at the bottom, plan for the future. I try to scale these out so that they are going to last the next 3 to 5 years because it's hard to predict what the threat landscape is going to be out there for the next in 3 to 5 years, and also what your network looks like today probably won't be the same in 3 to 5 years as well. So we try to build in a little scale in there so that you're not having to just dump something you just bought last year because all your needs changed a year from now.
All right, compliance. Many of you might be working in industries where they actually deal with compliance, and many of you might also be underestimating that. PCI is probably one of the most common ones. That's for anyone who processes any credit card payments. So really, that could be pretty much anyone in any kind of industry. And people underestimate that quite a bit sometimes, but if you do run any sort of credit card payments, whether you're a doctor's office or whether you're in a retail environment or whether you're in a hospitality environment, you absolutely need a firewall. That is an absolute must. Then some of the other things are HIPAA. Most of you who work in healthcare or in the medical sector know about HIPAA. If you ever gone to the doctor, you know that you had to sign a HIPAA form, and the financial institutions have their own
They have their own set of compliances, yes, and it's all about keeping patient, customer, financial data, all of that information, because that is, in that analogy of the house, your furniture and belongings are what's important in your house. In your network, it's customer information, their demographics, for the purposes of them, the people that want that information to get in there and use it for most often financial gain, stealing identities, and then opening up credit cards in your name, that kind of thing. So you may not think that the data you have behind your firewall is very important, but to some people it's very, very important. And it's not important for a good reason. It's because they want to steal it and use it.
Yeah, and the important thing to remember is even if you're not in any of those industries where you have any compliance or regulations, that just means that your business's data is completely up to you and completely in your hands.
The security of it is up to you, yes.
So you absolutely have to kind of make that a priority, and we listed a bunch of different industries because we really want to stress that it matters to every single business, and it does not matter whether you have 2 employees or whether you have 200 employees. A firewall is the absolute minimum of any security.
And then you need to manage your firewall moving forward. We mentioned that at the start, and the firewall. The threat landscape that I refer to just means how people are finding ways to get into your network to snoop around and steal information. The way they do that is not the same all the time. It's not the same this week as it was last week. So the firewall and the network security people are always having to respond to those threats, change code so that it can identify those threats and really let you know and alert you when it sees some things that are out of the ordinary. So you have to continuously keep your firewalls and other network security devices on your network up to date, up to speed, so that they know what to look for. And like it says there, it's only as good as the services that are running on it.
That is probably one of the biggest things we see in the industries. Again, it's a set it and forget it that just does not apply to a firewall. Many people buy it with maybe 3 years of services outright, and then realize 3 years down the road, nobody remembers that, you know, you get this email and you get another email, but it's just like any other thing. You get a million reminders, and it's kind of, you're busy running your business. So there are some ways to combat when you try to keep your firewall online and try to remember renewing those services. And a lot of Nextech is one example, but most technology providers provide a management solution for you, and we have some information on that. So the important thing about it is the renewals, of course, as we mentioned, but it's not just the renewals, it's the reports and then a security review as well. So if you do have a managed firewall type setup, yes, we're going to make sure that we'll take care of your software renewals, but in addition to that, we also talk about having monthly reports, and Lauren, maybe you can talk a little bit about what those reports are.
The reports are general information about the health of the firewall, plus it does give you some maybe eye-opening information about just how many times during a day, week, month that your network has been attempted to be compromised. And also even more alarmingly, how many of those attempts actually succeeded and actually got through your firewall in some way, shape, or form to get into your network. So those reports list that, plus also information about the internal network. We can even drill down to the users on your network and what information is flowing back and forth. And I mentioned content filtering before. You can get some information about the websites and places that your users are going and what they're doing, just to give you a general understanding of what's going in and out of your network. And I say out of your network as well, because that is a big part of the way that the people that are attacking your network, they want to not only see the information that's in your network, but also download it back to their site. So, you know, in some way they get that data out. So we not only are trying to keep the bad guys out with a firewall and not let them in, quite often there has something has happened in your network that data is going back out. So we have to identify both ways. So we've got to be able to identify when some information is going back out. And
those monthly reports help with that. And we can also sit down with you and actually go through one of those reports, because a lot of times it's a lot of information, and you know, it's not your primary job to run security in your business. Your primary job is to run your business. So we can sit down and actually go through, explain to you what they mean. And then part of it is also not just the reports and the software renewals, but part of it is also, as Lauren had mentioned earlier today, sitting down on an annual basis and looking at your network. Has it changed? How do you have more users? Have you grown? Do you have your needs completely? Maybe you've have less users than you had a year ago. So then we can look, okay, is what you have still in line with your network, and do we need to make any changes? And then part of it is also proactive hardware replacement, because a lot of people, hardware is just like anything, you try to keep it as long as you can, but sometimes that also means you're compromising on some of those services that are available. And as Lauren mentioned, the security landscape changes quite significantly. And there's a kind of chart that kind of shows you that a lot of times, if you opt to not go with a managed solution, some of those things might happen or they might not.
Just slip through the cracks sometimes.
Exactly.
That's understandable.
Exactly. And then part of this whole setup is going to be having a long-term security strategy for your business to keep you up to date, keep you secure, and to not leave it up to chance.
That's what we had for you today. Again, I'm Lauren Von Linnell from Nextech here, and Olga. Kristen, did we have any questions that came through?
I don't see any questions, but if you do happen to have any questions, feel free to enter those in really quickly. If we do happen to cut off before you get your question answered, we will do our best to get that answered for you shortly.
Absolutely.
This webinar will be available on our website at nextech.com/free-webinar probably by the end of today. You can also look us up on YouTube. And just be on the lookout for future webinars as well. I want to thank Olga and Lauren today for kind of schooling us on security needs and maybe freaking some of us out a little bit. But looks like we're still good with questions. So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.